coward.
Hey, how's it going YouTube? This is Devin with PubStompMTG, and in this video today I'm going to be talking about another Jumpstart 2025 commander, and that's Gornog the Red Reaper. And the reason why I want to talk about this commander, and it's very exciting, is the fact that they brought cowards back to Magic the Gathering. I think they brought it back with Zendikar Rising. So let's first read what this does and I'll dive into it. So for 2 and a red legendary creature, Minotaur Warrior, it does have haste, and most importantly, cowards can't block warriors, and whenever one or more warriors you control attack a player, target creature that player controls becomes a coward, and attacking warriors you control get +X+0, where X is the number of cowards your opponents control, which is just absolutely funny. I think it's just funny to make your opponent's creature into a coward, especially if it's like an Avacyn, because Avacyn's definitely no coward, but because of Gornog, it's totally going to make her a coward. Also, what I find most interesting about this commander is the fact that it becomes a coward. It's not until end of turn, it's permanently forever on the game. So that does make sense with that last ability, attacking warriors you control get +X+0, where X is the number of cowards your opponents control. So every time your Gornog does attack, or other warriors do attack, you'll make your opponent's creatures into cowards, and they'll always coward against your warriors because of course cowards can't block warriors. And so this is a very aggressive commander that's definitely based on the warrior theme, and so I'm excited to brew around this, so let's get it started. So I do want to first talk about that ability. Whenever one or more warriors you control attack a player, target creature that player controls becomes a coward. Something to note about that interaction, let's just say you're swinging at one person with 3 different warriors. You're only going to be making one creature a coward on his side of the battlefield, but if you spread those warriors to those other 2 opponents, let's just say one is attacking at each opponent, you can make 3 different creatures on the battlefield cowards, because remember, when you're attacking a player, that target creature that player controls becomes a coward. So you definitely want to spread the love by having a lot of warriors on the battlefield. So let's look at some of the best options. So one option that I think will work pretty well in this deck is Archetype of Aggression. Not all your creatures are going to get through for combat damage, because not all your opponent's creatures are going to be warriors. So giving that option of trample to your creatures would be crucial. If you do want a cost reducer to your warriors, because some are a little costly, Bright Hearth Banneret is an incredible option. Elemental spells and warrior spells cost 1 less to play, plus you can use that reinforce ability to target creature you control to get a little bit extra damage through. Another option, if unblockable, is going to be an absolute menace, is Markov Blademaster, because it does have double strike, and when it deals combat damage to a player you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Because it does have double strike, you will deal 1 damage first, then deal 2 damage later on, putting an extra 1/1 counter on it, making it a 3/3 with double strike on that first turn, and then later on it's just going to be even more insane. And because cowards can't block warriors, this is going to get exponentially bigger and bigger as the game goes on. Speaking of buffing up all your warriors, Lavissa Cold Eyes is a great option. Each creature that's a barbarian, a warrior, or a berserker gets +2/+2 and has haste. So obviously we're using it for that second ability with warriors, because they all will get that static ability of +2/+2 and haste. We have that option of swinging in automatically and making a lot of creatures cowards, but we don't want to just rely on our commander to make our opponent's creatures cowards. So I think Kerrigan Intimidator would be a great option. It's a secondary option just in case if your commander keeps on getting removed. Obviously cowards can't block warriors, which is very fitting. You could pay 1 and choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. It gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Target creature becomes a coward until end of turn, and target warrior gains trample until end of turn. This is very versatile, especially in our warrior decks. So this is one just in case if our commander keeps on getting removed from the battlefield, we still have that option. Cowards can't block warriors. Another warrior that does a similar thing is Boldwire Intimidator. This does cost a lot of mana with 5 and 2 red, but it has that ability, cowards can't block warriors. That's what we want to take advantage of. But it does have activated abilities, target creature becomes a coward until end of turn. That's what we want to utilize. And the other activated ability, target creature becomes a warrior until end of turn, is not as useful, but I think the most important part, again, if we don't have our commander out on the battlefield, cowards can't block warriors, this is a great option for us to be essentially unblockable. Because we can get in for some combat damage, Professional Facebreaker will be an option that we could absolutely take advantage of, because whenever one of our creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token. So first of all, that's great for ramp, and later on if we want to sacrifice that treasure, if we have enough lands, we could just exile the top card of our library and play that card that turn. Another option to get some treasure is using Gimli of the Glittering Caves, because it does have double strike, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token. So essentially, per combat, you're going to be making 2 treasure tokens because of that double strike, and it does get bigger each time a legendary creature enters the battlefield. And if we do want to go a little bit more aggressive in our strategy, Ogre Battle Driver is a great option because it's a warrior itself, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, that creature gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. That's perfect. We want to go into that aggressive strategy, swing at our opponents, make their creatures cowards, and make our creatures unblockable with that +2/+0. But let's talk about extra combats. I know I talk about extra combats a lot on my channel. I love them so much because I feel like it's a great way to end the game. But I would say there's a lot of warriors that actually do give you extra combats. On top of that, Gornog does give you a great attack trigger. Whenever one of our warriors you control attack a player, target creature that player controls becomes a coward. Little by little, the more combats we do take advantage of, the more chances all our opponent's creatures will be cowards, and essentially our creatures will be unblockable. Plus, I know that last ability is nothing to scoff at. Attacking warriors you control get +X/+0, where X is the number of cowards your opponents control. So if all our opponent's creatures are cowards, they're going to get extra buffed up. So let's look at some of the extra combat options that we can take advantage of. The first one I wanted to focus on is Morog, Fury of Akum. This is a Minotaur, so it's very fitting with our commander because it's a Minotaur. Plus, each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it's attacked this turn, and it does have that Land of Fall ability. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. So not only are all our creatures going to get buffed up with our commander with the amount of cowards on the battlefield, Morog is going to buff them up even further and swing for a lot of damage. Another extra combat option that is a warrior on top of that is Combat Celebrant. This is a great option because if it hasn't been exerted this turn, you may exert it as it attacks. When you do untap all of the creatures you control, after this phase there's an additional combat phase. So again, this is perfect because it's a warrior. We could swing it at somebody else, make that creature a coward so this doesn't die during combat, and then later on when it isn't tapped, we could do it all over again. There are some other options for extra combats like Savage Beating. This has the option with Entwine to give your creatures you control double strike, or untap all creatures you control to get an additional combat phase. Of course, you want to use that Entwine ability to get more damage through essentially. The same can be applied for the Great Train Heist. I like this because of the modal abilities. For one, it's an extra combat with that first spree ability. The second one, you could buff up your creatures and give it first strike. And that last one, you could get some treasure tokens whenever the creatures you control deal combat damage. So this will be a great option for those modal spells. Then again, there's a ton of options to get extra combats in red. There's so many different spells that you could take advantage of. Also some other things like enchantments. But of course, you want to win the game of Commander. Here's an option to get infinite combats essentially. This is a classic option that I love using in a lot of my extra combat decks, and that's using Aggravated Assault in some way to get mana, like using Neheb the Eternal. With Neheb, it has that ability at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add a red mana for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. So as long as your opponents have lost 5 or more life, you could add 5 red mana. And of course, that will match up perfectly with Aggravated Assault's activated ability, paying 5 red mana, untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there's an initial combat phase. So this is just a good way to close out the game, because if you constantly attack with your warriors, you're making all those other creatures on the battlefield that your opponents control into cowards. So you will always have that way of getting mana with Neheb and paying into that mana cost with Aggravated Assault. Also, another fun option if you have a lot of warriors on the battlefield is using Shared Animosity. Because whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +1/+0 for until end of turn for each other attacking creature that shares a type with it. Obviously, we are in the warrior focused deck, so our commander will buff up all our warriors, and this will just buff them up even further, so that most likely they will be lethal for combat damage to our opponents. So those are some ways you win the game. Most likely you're going to be winning the game with combat damage, so a lot of cards that I previously mentioned are most likely going to get you there. But that is going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video. I do believe Gornog is going to be one powerful and aggressive commander that a lot of people are going to enjoy, but I would love to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts and opinions about Gornog? Do you plan on building him yourself? What other options do you think that you would add into the deck? I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, if you want to support the channel a little bit further, consider joining my Patreon, as there's a lot of great benefits. But if not, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. With that out of the way, thank you for stopping by.